Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, This Week in Wrestling History. No funny intro this week because I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be funny and not make Jacob yell at me for yelling into the microphone, apparently.
Yeah, because that sucked editing that last week.
Boo-hoo.
You jerk.
Hey, some days you got to work.
Mm.
All right, This Week in Wrestling History podcast. Another little bit of an odd show. Not that we ever have normal shows anymore, but we're still kind of in the dregs of summer where we'll probably start doing SummerSlam reviews next week, maybe the week after. So until then, you get this show.
You get this pile of whatever we're about to do.
So we thought we'd actually sit down and look at the major companies that currently exist and have world titles and look at the world titles and kind of rank them and compare them as well as their secondary titles. And this is just currently for men's and, singles titles.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for.
Singles titles, men's singles titles, and it's the main belt plus the secondary, which could be a TV title, could be a cruiserweight title, X Division in Impact's case.
Right. So let's just, real quick, I'll just run through the list that we have. We have the WWE World Title, the Universal Title, the IWGP Heavyweight Title, the Impact World Title, ROH World Title, the NXT Title, the WWE US Title, WWE Intercontinental Title, IWGP Intercontinental Title, the X Division Title, the Ring of Honor TV Title, and the NXT North American Championship.
Yeah, so we tried to have at least for every world title one secondary or how do they pronounce it? Tertiary?
Tertiary would be
like the U.S. title, the North American title. They still consider them tertiaries.
Do they really? Because U.S., we'll get into that a little bit as we get into these, but we're going to be kind of talking about these as far as the physical design, the appearance of the title goes,
yep.
The lineage,
yep.
Basically the history of the belt, and then the current value of the belt, or how's it looking today.
Yeah, and we're going to break it down by company. So we'll do WWE, also throw NXT in there.
Yep.
Then we'll hit New Japan, then Impact.
And then Ring of Honor. Sounds like a plan. All right. Anything to talk about this week going on in wrestling? Not too much, I don't think. Before we get into this.
Aside from All Out sold out.
No, it's their TV taping that sold out this week.
All Out also just sold out.
That sold out like immediately too. I thought they must have just released more tickets then.
Yeah. So the initial
block.
They did it pretty much like they did with all the other ones.
Okay, where they
had put out X amount of tickets
and then released a few more production holds.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure they pulled back on they opened up like 5 or 6 more rows in the camera section.
Mm-hmm.
And they opened those up for people to see.
Yeah, those are the production holds because they might be putting cameras there, setting up other equipment. Might just be... Honestly, some of those tickets don't get sold because of however the ring is going to be set up. They might be sitting behind like a giant pillar holding some ring element design thing up. So
they both the first ever TV taping for them and the next pay-per-view, quote pay-per-view, sold out.
All Out happens before the TV tapings, though, correct?
Correct. That happens at the end of this month.
Yeah, end of August, and then maybe they'll find some filler event for September. Otherwise, they start August 2nd.
I'm pretty sure they have. I don't think they've announced anything yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going to have something in between.
It would make sense to me.
TV.
You're right. I'll be honest. I want AEW to do well, but they've run out of goodwill in my book.
Yeah, and
I think you're a little bit higher on them still than I am, but
I'm giving them up until the TV show.
Right. That I need All Out to be good. It needs to be significantly better than the previous two were, which, in their defense, those weren't technically pay-per-view level events. They were more like a Clash of the Champions level event.
Yeah, their lower mid-tier.
Right. It was like a big monthly show, but not supposed to be the biggest showing that they can do.
Right.
I just think they're hurting their value a little bit right now.
I think if anything, if any of the shows are going to be, how do I want to put it, blockbusters, it would be this one as the next one.
It would make sense being kind of the sequel to the thing that started everything.
Right.
but I really fear that they're not thinking about their shows that are happening a few months from now. I feel like they're only looking at the next show, then the next show, which that's the Vince Russo style of booking.
Yeah, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now because their long-term booking might start getting better as soon as they have a TV show.
Right, which is a completely valid point because right now they're dealing with this non-set thing. It's a really kind of amorphous and changing,
Right.
and no one really knew a lot about what it was going to be, where it was going, so it was kind of hard to...
They're way too
set.
much in flux right now.
Right. Once they kind of hit TNT and have an established weekly show, that's really kind of when the grading can really begin, because up until now, it's been a little fly by the seat of your pants, which I don't know if I can ding them for that or not. Maybe they should have had a better plan, maybe not, but is what it is.
Yeah, and aside from that, I mean, SummerSlam is next week.
Is it next week or the week after?
It's the 11th.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so next week.
So next Sunday. I'm really, really hoping we don't get Dolph versus Goldberg like everybody is teasing right now. I really hope that's not a
There's
thing.
no need for that match. Yes, Goldberg's last match was a travesty. Yes, I'm sure he does want to make up for it, but there's no reason to.
But don't.
Just
Right off into the sunset.
or give him another giant match at Mania against another legend. Don't.
And let him squash said legend.
Right. Don't sacrifice current talent for a legend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was fine with Undertaker and Roman Reigns versus Shane and Drew, because Shane took the pinfall there.
Right.
Shane's not a current star, despite whatever's going on with him. Drew looked great in that match for the whole thing while he was there. Even though he was on the losing effort of it, there was still Roman in there to get the rub from it on the winning side, so it's not like it was just the Undertaker show. So
Right. And I would even argue that it was okay when Goldberg had the Universal title for one last run. I mean,
that I'm going to dispute a lot more, but
just solely for the fact that it was Brock and Kevin. And Kevin Owens, if anybody's going to be able to bounce back, it's him.
that whole reign was bad for KO. I don't think the Goldberg stuff was any worse than the rest of the reign, honestly, so it was what it was, I guess.
Perfect segue into starting with the titles.
All right. So, do you want to start with Raw's titles?
Yeah,
okay,
let's
we'll
start
do
with the
Raw's, then
Universal.
SmackDowns, then NXT's.
Yep.
All right, we'll go by brand.
Cool.
All right, so Raw, number 1 belt, Universal title. So that whole starting on a high note thing, I guess, ain't happening. All right.
You go first.
All right. For design, so our rating scales are a little bit different. You graded them like A through F.
Correct.
I gave them a number. And these are, keep in mind, everyone, these are purely subjective.
Yeah.
These are not hard, fast things. If you disagree, send us an email. Find us on Facebook. Call us out on it. We'll be more than happy to have a discussion on these.
Prove us wrong.
Prove us wrong. All right. For design, I gave it a 5 because I don't mind the big, giant WWE logo on them, but the colors on this thing are hideous.
Yeah.
It's the red strap. It's the red strap.
And it's the bright red strap.
Yes. It's a really bad red. It's almost like an orangey red to that.
It's not even a Monday Night Raw red.
Right.
It's brighter than that.
Exactly. It's not that classic WWE Attitude Era red squiggle underline red.
Right.
Which, to be fair, that's a much easier red to show than to actually manufacture on a thing.
Very, very true. Very true.
But does not change the fact that this is a god-awful ugly belt.
But, I mean, flip it on the other side. Look at one belt that we're not going to talk about, the IWGP US title.
Yeah.
The red strap on that is gorgeous.
It is much better, yeah.
Even the red on the North American title. significantly better.
Oh, that's more of a maroon. I don't call that red. That's maroon.
It's in the same family. Same family of
And
color.
this is when the wrestling podcast turned into an aesthetics lesson, and we started quibbling about art and shade of colors.
So for design, I gave the Universal title a whopping F.
Yeah, that.
Worst.
So the worst one on my list got a 3. So keep in mind a 5 is pretty low on my list.
Yeah, but still on a grade from 1 to 10, you're about midway.
Right. Again, my 10. Something that's going to kind of come to be shown here is my 1 to 10 is not like. The difference between a 1 and a 2 is not the same as between a 9 and a 10 necessarily. These are also have a lot of subjectivity built into my individual numbers here. So me giving this this is a rough 5.
Yeah, well, that's why I went with an F.
That's fair.
The design of this belt, and don't get me wrong, I didn't give the WWE title much better.
I did.
It's the fact that with the red plus the giant WWE logo. I mean, you and I have talked about this before.
Right.
I'm not a fan of the giant branding dead center in the middle of this belt.
You're not. For me, that's the only reason it is a little bit higher is because at least there's that consistency between the WWE title, the Universal title, the Raw Women's Championship, and the SmackDown Women's Championship. The fact that the logo persists through all of them actually is an overall positive for them. Whether on one belt you might think it looks like a damn Buick logo blown up and slapped onto a belt, be that as it may, the fact that it has a common thread running through them benefits it in my book. I can get you not liking it, so
I would get that part, but if we're gonna go with overall consistency, make the belt like the strap itself black, and make the background of the logo red like the women's titles.
Yes. If we want to talk about what they could have done better, yes, by all means. There's a ton of improvements they could make, but on its own, that's where I was. So,
to me, execution was very, very flawed in this, and that's why I poop. It's
right.
poop.
Fair enough. Would you give it for lineage?
I give it a D.
I give it a 3.
So we're about the same there.
Yeah, not quite as low as you could go, but real bad. My only comment on it was it's fucking cursed.
Yes, it is the cursed belt. Because if Brock Lesnar doesn't have it, somebody gets hurt while having it.
Right. It goes not well for whoever has it. Well, Seth did okay, but honestly, it's very new still. It's only, 3 years? 4?
Yeah, I mean, 3. It'll actually be 3 years at SummerSlam because Finn Balor won it in 2016 at SummerSlam.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a real lineage.
Don't get me wrong, there's some star power in that.
Right. That's honestly, I think that's the only reason why you didn't give it an F and I gave it a 3 instead of like a 1 is because of the people that have held it, they're about as high as you can really kind of get in the company.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we dislike Brock Lesnar, the fact that the guy's held it 3 times and all of his reigns are over
100 days at least.
Over 150 days.
Right. And I would say it's not that we dislike Brock necessarily. We just dislike how he's been used more recently.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right.
I mean,
so it's
aside, you also the one-off that I would put on here is Goldberg.
Right. And that was more of a feel-good type run, but it wasn't offensive.
Right. Finn Balor, need I say more?
Oh, yeah.
Kevin Owens, need I say more? Goldberg, Brock, Roman, which
in retrospect, Roman was he's good. Like much like he doesn't get the pass that Brock gets the pass for on being used. Is for some reason with Roman it got deeply personal.
Yeah,
but it's not been Roman's fault that he's in the position he's in.
No, not at all. He's okay on the mic.
Yep.
He's getting better.
He's okay to really good when he's being authentic.
Yeah. And he's very good in the ring. I wouldn't put him at a Daniel Bryan level. I wouldn't put him at a Finn Balor level.
Right.
But he's good.
Yeah. It remains to be seen if he can be kind of the driving force in a match. If he can kind of...
If he's the one that's going to shot call and...
Right. If he's the guy that can take someone that's below him and bring them up to his level.
Right. You're not going to get him pulling Mustafa Ali up to the level that he was at, like Daniel Bryan did when they had a match.
Well, right. Well, it remains to be seen.
Because he hasn't been put in that position yet.
Right. Or if he takes someone that's kind of meh, like a Baron Corbin. We don't know if he could have a good match with a Baron Corbin. He can have a great match with a great person. We don't know if he can have a decent to good match with a meh talent.
I mean, if Seth can barely carry Corbin through a match, I don't know how Roman's going to be able to do with it.
Well, that's I think exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Current value of the title.
I gave it a D.
Okay, I gave it a 5. So,
and the only reason I gave it a D on this is because fucking Brock. That the main issue that I've had is that belt has not shown up. It's been around for 3 years, and it's shown up for one of those.
Exactly. My only comment on it was this should be a much higher value, but here we are. It's really just the fact that it hasn't shown up much. So there's the most defining reign with this title is Brock having it and not being around.
Yes.
That's really tough.
It's gotten better recently.
It's been better with Seth, but
even with
Brock now showing up a little bit more.
Yeah, when Brock won it off of Seth, I immediately thought, well, here we go. That we're not going to see that belt for another month until the next big pay-per-view. But he's shown up on Raw with it.
Yeah.
He's actually shown up doing stuff with it, which I think is in the right direction.
Sure.
But until it's there every week and until Brock is having matches every week.
That's the biggest thing is someone prolific needs to have it and have a significant reign and the visibility on the title needs to be raised.
Give me what John Cena was doing with the U.S. title at one point, but as Brock. It would work perfectly with Brock. I'm the beast. Come try to take it.
So theoretically, this is their main title.
Theoretically.
It absolutely does not feel like it.
Nope.
And to your general non-core wrestling fans, no one's going to know.
If you were to take somebody who knows about wrestling and say, okay, look at these two belts, and you hold the WWE title and the Universal title, and ask them, which one do you think is the more important one? They're going to say the WWE title just because it looks more important.
Correct. Definitely. So, as something that's because Raw is supposed to be the main show over SmackDown.
Yep.
So, theoretically, whatever world title is on Raw is the quote-unquote main one. All right. Secondary Raw belt. U.S. title?
Yeah.
All right. U.S. title. What you got for design?
So, for the U.S. title, for me, it's going to be a little bit higher because you know how I feel about this belt.
Yeah.
I gave it a B+.
I gave it a 6. So, I'll be honest, I gave four of the titles that we're going to talk about today a 6. So this is a solid. I'm going to have to kind of differentiate. This is a low 6 for me, honestly.
Okay.
It's fine, but
I really enjoy that belt.
For some belts, the lack of symmetry is good. On this one, I dislike how pointy it is on the bottom. It just bugs me a little bit.
Okay.
It just looks a little wonkadoo.
I could get that. See, to me, it's because it doesn't have that massive branding on it.
Yeah.
It's one of to me, the best looking belts. It's also when I got back into watching wrestling, it was part of some of my favorite storylines.
Okay.
So, like, when Benoit and Booker T were feuding over it, doing the best of 7 series for the U.S. title. It was fun TV to watch.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the lineage here, but you're not wrong, whereas when you visually look at that thing, you can tell that's the U.S. championship.
Right. There's no questions. You don't know what that... There's no way somebody could question what that belt
Right.
means.
If you took the WWE title, the Universal title, the IC title, and the U.S. belt, and put them all together and said, pick out the U.S. belt, you'd be like, well, it's that one.
Right.
Like, that one you're not going to not get instantly. Whereas all of the other 3, I could see a non-wrestling fan going, that one, and just kind of picking any of the other 3 for any of the other 3. All right. Lineage.
Do you want me to go first still?
Yep.
I gave it a B+ for Lineage.
So I actually gave it 3 different Lineage ratings.
Okay.
WWE Lineage gets a 4. Not good. It's
okay.
WCW Lineage was a 6. That's explicitly WCW Lineage.
Okay.
NWA Lineage was actually a 5. It was a little bit lower. It's a little bit too much of a hot potato.
Okay.
So the reason this got so low for me is winning the U.S. title didn't necessarily mean that this is the guy that's going to kind of be moving up the card. Sometimes the U.S. title was the ceiling instead of it being the thing to prepare the guy to break through that ceiling into the upper card. Sometimes sometimes the U.S. champ that's as good as it gets for you, son.
Okay. I could see that with some of the people in here. However, one of my big arguments to that would be John Cena.
There's definitely been people that break the rule. Certainly. I was kind of giving it an overall weighting.
Okay.
And it's the U.S. title just never felt in, especially for Lineage, historically. It never felt like this was necessarily going to the guy that breakout mid-card star that's really going to be pushing upwards. It's also been used kind of weakly in, this is something that's going to get brought up when we get to the IC title as well, especially more modernly, it being the fallback crutch for a main event guy that doesn't have any other program. It shouldn't necessarily be used as a random thing for a guy like AJ holding it, basically because they needed something else for AJ to do. And do we think that an AJ program can't stand on its own without a title in the mix?
No.
So AJ doesn't really need it.
Correct.
So it's definitely a technical step backwards from the WWE title.
My argument to that would be, even though he may not need it, if they're trying to boost the importance of it, which
they did with Cena as well.
They did with Cena, and they did for a little bit afterwards. I mean, when Jericho, Kevin Owens, and AJ were feuding over it on SmackDown, like it made that belt feel a little bit more important. However, it definitely lost that after it jumped back to Raw. I would say the minute that Dolph Ziggler laid it down and left.
Yeah, that definitely hurt.
I mean, Bobby Roode getting it.
I mean, go back a number of years, though, when there was a time when that belt was held by didn't Orlando Jones hold it or something as part of the cabinet?
Orlando Jordan had it.
I
mean, if we go back around there.
So that's the big reason I give the WWE lineage a real ding, is because it was a real nothing belt for a while, and it went on guys. The U.S. title more than the IC belt seems to be this is all you'll ever hold. Here, have a token title reign belt.
Yeah, and I could see that. There's some people on that list, though, that I think could have gone a little bit farther, but they just didn't do it with them.
Right. And
so let me go back a little bit. So we had where Orlando Jordan had it. Fine. That guy wasn't going to do anything.
Right.
Fit Finley had it for a little bit. Fit was past his prime at this point.
Right, again, but that's one of your this is all you'll ever have belt.
Mr. Kennedy could have done better.
Could have.
He definitely could have been world heavyweight champion when that belt was still around, like around the time Dolph had it, around the time that DB had it.
I think he needed a little bit more something. I'm not saying that he couldn't have gotten there, but
I think he could have gotten there at some point.
maybe.
Benoit had it like 5 times, which, okay.
Yeah.
MVP, he had an attitude issue when he was in WWE, and he didn't fit what they wanted at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably wouldn't have gone anywhere.
He hasn't really gone anywhere the other place. Like, he's held other titles in other organizations, but I don't think he's ever been like a world champ anywhere.
No. I mean, he was the first IWGP IC title holder.
Yep.
Which, cool.
Yeah.
But Matt Hardy did a little bit more outside of the company.
But I wouldn't also necessarily say he's WWE world champ material.
In the right program, I could see him being WWE title.
I think you need to bring the Woken thing up a whole lot more than it ever was.
Give me Woken on crack against The Fiend. Okay. Kofi.
Yeah.
The Miz.
But so at the time when Kofi held it, it very much felt like that was probably about the ceiling for Kofi.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So
here's the part where I tank it a little bit. In 2010, Bret Hart held it.
Uh-huh.
No.
Nope, that shouldn't have happened.
My lineage, I did it, again, a little bit different than you did. I went all the way back. I looked at a total overall.
And so did I. I mean, I got WCW and NWA in there.
But you did 3 difference. Mine was lineage from point A to now.
Yeah. Look at the NWA days, though. It hot potatoed a lot.
It did hot potato a lot, but there was a couple in here where
So I think my biggest thing for lineage is with a lot of these titles, you can think back to a couple iconic reigns. You may have a different opinion on it, but for me, there's no iconic, that's the U.S. champ reign. Like, so I didn't watch during the Cena days, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, if Cena just kept the belt the way it was and didn't do the stupid spinner, Cena, to me, it was one of 4 people. Cena, Booker, Benoit, and Carlito, as bad as that sounds. The Cena-Carlito feud was fantastic.
Keep in mind, that's only the most recent third of that title's history, though.
Yeah, that's from 2004 on.
Yeah. That thing's been around since the 70s. The fact that you don't have anything older than that, I think kind of... that's why my lineage ratings are so low.
But that's why we're also doing this podcast, because I didn't watch all that stuff.
Okay, anyways, let's go to the current value of this thing. Who knew the U.S. title would be the one that got the most discussion so far?
Right.
All right, current value. Let's see. I gave it a 6. I said, in the hands of AJ, it could be elevated, but as of right now, it's the biggest afterthought singles title they have, even more so than the 24/7 belt, and it needs to stop being the main event guy needs a holdover program belt.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As of right now, the 24/7 belt is definitely a bigger,
like they give more attention to figuring out what they're doing with it.
Yeah. I gave it a current value as a B.
So about the same, roughly.
So again, because of what's happened with it over the last 2 years on SmackDown, when Jericho, KO, and AJ were feuding over it, it made it feel a little bit more important.
Okay.
It dipped a little bit in there when Jeff Hardy brought it to SmackDown, and Shinsuke had it for a little bit. Rusev had it.
Yeah, and it kind of the hot potato factor.
Right. And it's slowly gotten better since since they put Joe into the mix with it, that program was a little weird.
Yeah.
But now that AJ has it, I think it could definitely boost it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it could give it a little bit more meaning when Ricochet takes it off of AJ and carries it for a little bit.
That would be nice. All right. Over to SmackDown.
SmackDown time.
All right. WWE title.
All right. So out of the ones that we've talked about, this is so far my highest rated one.
It is my, spoiler alert, it is my overall highest rated.
It's number 3 on my list.
Okay.
So, design, what did you give it?
I gave it an 8 out of 10. That, the strap being a different color was everything for me on that one.
So, I gave it a D.
And I think we honestly already covered this mostly when we talked about the Universal title and even the U.S. title just now is I'm much more lenient on that throughput of branding on it.
The reason this is a little bit better than the Universal is because it's the actual logo.
Right.
It's not the logo, but they needed to break up the red, so it's a black underline on it now.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is that when this new version debuted and they had the side plates thing added on instead of the name plate at the bottom, I really like the side plate stuff. Right.
So, I mean, honestly, the main belt of your company is branding. That's really it's really what it's there for in this day and age.
But the IWGP belt,
it's
not as big, it's not as in your face. That's the part that gets me.
But look at like UFC belts. Look at boxing belts. There's a lot of branding tied in with belts.
Yeah, and the UFC belts and boxing belts are fucking atrocious.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. But
especially the new UFC belts.
I definitely give it a lot more forgiveness for being what it is, but I also don't fault you from going from a pure aesthetics. It's not the best. It's definitely...
It's just too much in your face. It's been too much in your face since the spinner belt.
Yeah. The spinner belt was the worst.
Give me the old school winged belt where you still had the WWF logo at the top of it, where it was a black background, but it was smaller. So it drew attention to it, but it wasn't the focal point of the belt.
So my only other thing is now that they've changed, now that they're giving like every World Series champ and every winning Super Bowl winning team and all these major sports figures, these like a commemorative version of the belt. That's all the more reason that this thing needs to be that's why it is in your face WWE branding.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
But also I get what you're saying, because making the focus of the belt the company rather than the person is an odd choice sometimes.
Yeah.
I get it from the company's point of view. I don't necessarily think that's always going to be the right point of view, but I get it. Lineage.
One of my highest ratings. I give it an A+ for Lineage.
Out of 1 to 10, out of 0 to 10, I give it a 15.
Yeah.
It's the title.
Yeah, I mean, again, the way I've always said it is that if you're a professional wrestler and you ask, or you're asked what belt you would most want to hold, I would want to be WWE champion, because I want my name on that list with all of those other people.
Right.
I want to be talked about in the same conversation as all of the people who have held this belt.
I don't think anyone in the business, if they're being honest, wouldn't do a whole lot to be on that list. I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be pretty honest about what they can reach, and that might be their quote-unquote goal.
Right.
But I can't fathom anyone in the business not having that secret aspiration to that, because it's the standard.
Right. Yeah, like there's no one who's going to say, if you ask them honestly, unlimited resources, unlimited amounts of talent, what belt do you want to hold?
Yeah.
They're going to say this belt.
Right. It's like, this is the title. If you're in this business, this is the one to have.
Right.
It's very rarely does that happen in things. But in this case, that's what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Current value, though.
C.
So I gave it a 7.5. And this one was a little weird for me. So kind of going back to what we just said, I said 7.5 only as a reflection of the current value of the company. But I'd argue it's still the gold standard for what a current value on a title should be, and that if this thing is a 7.5, then the highest grade I can give anything for a current value is a 7.5, because the value of the WWE title is a reflection of the value of professional wrestling as a commodity today.
Okay.
So, and then is a crappy little quote, it doesn't set the bar, it is the bar.
Yeah.
You can't really, at this point, no one has ever surpassed the value of the WWE title, as we literally just said. As long as this is the title that anyone wants, it's going to be the most valuable title to have. Until some company manages to overtake WWE on a global level, you can't beat this thing. Whatever value it has is the highest value anything can have.
That's fair.
Of course, to more core wrestling fans, obviously we can value them much differently, and you can have a subjective rating.
Which is what's
What
about
we're
to
doing.
happen.
Yeah. Totally fine and totally understand that. There's a lot of people that are going to say, oh, well, the people that have held title X are more entertaining, more in the ring, this, that, the other thing. I completely understand that.
But going back to what we just said, what belt are you going to want?
Right.
So the reason I gave the current value a C is more recently it hasn't been great.
Agreed.
Kofi is a fine champion.
Yes.
His programs have been good.
Yep.
But I don't care what happens with Kofi in that belt.
Yes.
Now,
Doesn't it kind of feel like you're overall grading the WWE as a whole when you're grading this?
yes.
Yeah.
Go back 120 days. I cared when Daniel Bryan had that belt. I cared when he debuted this new looking belt.
Kofi's win was definitely a bigger thing than Kofi's reign, and that's a tough thing for someone, because that the moment is almost kind of easier than what comes after the moment.
It's sustaining it.
Exactly. It's
And
always harder to sustain success than achieving success.
I don't fault Kofi for that by any means.
No.
But his programs since then, he had a one-off match with AJ.
There hasn't been anyone lurking in the shadows that felt like we wanted Kofi to reach the top of the mountain. Now it doesn't feel like there's anything evil lurking in the shadows of that mountain that's coming up right behind him.
Exactly. I think the only thing that could do that is if he was on SmackDown would legitimately be The Fiend.
That would be up there. I mean,
But
they're never going to do it. Big E. Like, I think
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great program. I have absolutely no problems with them not doing that, because it also is a little bit trite and a little bit easy.
I mean, they should have pulled
That's not
they should have pulled the trigger on Joe.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Joe should have been the monster that was just like, "Oh, you have something I want. Let me have it."
So the problem is, very rarely do we ever notice. You kind of need, in the title program, the champ doing his thing, but then you kind of need at the same time some bigger thing rising up to meet him when they hit that apex.
You need the big baddie coming up behind him trying to hit him in the back.
Exactly. That they just need. All right. I think that's less of the current value of this thing than anything. But all right, secondary SmackDown title.
The IC belt.
Yes.
Spoiler alert. This is my number 1 belt.
Interesting. It's definitely not my number 1.
So what did you give it for design?
Design, I gave it a 6 again. Just, it doesn't pop to me. It looks fine, but it also looks a little generic.
Yeah, I get that. I gave it an A.
Wow. All right.
Purely because it's different because it's the only men's title that's white.
Yeah, it does stand out in that regard.
It's the old school styled belt. They don't have a nameplate on it. They don't have side plates to it. To me, it's...
I think it does have side plates now. Well, not like changeable side plates.
Right. It has the regular side plates, but it doesn't have the put your logo here side plates.
Okay.
It's, to me, when I think of the Intercontinental belt, it's this, but with a black strap.
Okay.
So I like that they changed it a little bit to be a little more modern.
Well, the white strap was what it originally was way back.
Right. But when I remember, or when I go back and
Fair.
look at stuff, when Brett's holding it, when Perfect's holding it, it's this design, but with the black stripe. Or strap.
It was white.
Perfect had it when it was black, so did Brett.
I don't think so.
I can promise you, we just watched something recently about it.
Okay. Ultimate Warrior had all sorts of different colors on it.
Well,
And
yeah,
then after that, it was white, and that's when Brett and Perfect had it.
We'll talk about.
Okay,
I'll
you can
back
go
and
look that
forth
up while I'm talking about what I think of its lineage here. Then, how's that?
Wait, why did you give it a 6 or a 6.5 or whatever you gave it for your design?
Because it was bland. Because
that's right.
yeah, because it's generic. So lineage. So I said prior to the Attitude Era, this thing was an 11. Attitude Era and beyond, it's a 7. The people that would hold it are still incredibly big names, but the title also stopped being, and this is something I kind of said about the U.S. title, it stopped being that step between the mid card and the upper card, and just became something that was kind of tossed around without as much meaning. It stopped signifying who kind of that next guy was. It was just kind of, here's this thing. Sometimes it's that back burner belt for the main title program. It's So Brett with the IC belt, okay, it does have a black strap. Fine, perfect. I almost guarantee you his was white. Anyways, and again, I think we talked about this right before we started recording, was that when Austin chucked the belt away, it hurt the value of it. The feud with him and The Rock was kind of the last time it was that signifier.
Yeah, I agree with that. You don't ever want... So we talked about with the WWE title, you don't want somebody getting more important than the belt.
Yep.
That happened at this point.
Right.
Rock and Austin became more important than this belt.
And it never really fully recovered.
No. I will say
What did you grade it for lineage?
A+.
Okay.
Again, going all the way back.
Exactly.
And more recently, I really enjoyed, and I wish they put The Miz back in there. If they're not going to give him a WWE title, give him this. Because, honestly, to me, The Miz raised this belt a lot closer to where it was when Rock and Austin had it. I'm not going to say that he was at the same level.
Right.
But when he had that belt, he made it feel important.
I think the other thing I just realized is the IC belt used to also kind of be like their working man's belt, like
it was the work rate belt.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yes, it was the work rate belt. It doesn't feel like the work rate belt anymore. It's not necessarily
not
bad, but
not as much. I mean,
there was a lot of non-great workers that have held it. Which The Miz is an amazing interview. He's not the best worker. He's not awful. He's not as bad as some people will dog him out for.
But think about it again. Him versus Roman, when they did that at the Raw.
Yep.
It was a good match.
It really was.
Because Roman pulled him up a little bit. Miz can have good matches with people who are better than him.
Right. But the problem is, can Miz have... So Brett and Perfect could have matches... Brett literally got a guy hired because he was able to pull that guy up so high.
You're talking apples and oranges at this point.
Well, but that's kind of my point, though, is that belt was historically the guys that could raise someone up to their level, and possibly they could raise people beyond what those people could ever reach on their own.
True.
And Austin could do that.
Yeah.
Austin was a great worker.
The Rock could do it.
Rock wasn't as good of a worker as Austin, but he had a presence about him that always made things feel bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's not unimportant.
Here's one thing that I will bring up. We talked about the U.S. title. You couldn't think of somebody that, when I say WWE U.S. title, you don't have somebody in mind when you're, what's the word I'm looking for? Relating to that belt.
Uh-huh.
WWE Intercontinental title.
So, as far as historic reigns, Brett, Perfect, HBK in the 90s.
So to me, one of the major things that stands out with this belt, HBK and Razor.
Yeah. That ladder match at WrestleMania 10.
Like, more so than some of the more recent WWE title matches.
Mm-hmm.
I have to put this belt... That's one of the reasons I have to put this belt so much higher.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Current value of the belt. What'd you give it?
I gave it an A-.
Interesting.
So, the reason for the minus is because Shinsuke has it right now. And I don't know how his workability is going to be if he's actually going to care about
if
this
he's going
belt.
to show up or not. So I gave it a 5.5. I said it's very similar to the U.S. belt, but feels even a little bit less important than the U.S. title right now, mostly because Finn lost it on the pre-show of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean...
That's not a good look.
But then, just before that, look at how he won it. When he's the demon coming out, and essentially...
Did he win it at Mania? Or no, he won it before Mania.
No, he won it at Mania.
Okay.
The first time he won it was at the Elimination Chamber.
Oh, that's right. And then he lost it back to Bobby, and then he won it back at Mania. And
right.
Just decimated. Yeah. So that would have been great. The problem is the difference between Mania and what was the most recent one?
Extreme Rules pre-show.
Yeah. That's a far drop. And
like, don't get me wrong. I get it. But then if we go back and look, Seth, when he was feuding with Dolph and putting on those gauntlet matches, and that Seth was literally carrying Raw because Brock wasn't around with that IC belt.
But that's what they wanted, but I still felt the vacuum of that Universal title being gone is the problem.
Oh, absolutely. So, when your main title is gone, that's always going to be something people are talking about.
Yeah.
But to me, when Seth can have that belt and main event with it and make it seem like it's the most important thing on the show because the other guy isn't there.
Yeah, that's fair. And Dean did the same thing with it, honestly.
Yeah.
So, going to warn everyone and apologize right now. This is going to be a long show because we're not even halfway through and we're almost 50 minutes into this.
Perfect.
All right. Maybe we'll have our first two-parter.
We might have to.
Yeah. Gotta love upload limits. All right, moving on to the third WWE brand, the NXT World Title.
I gave the NXT title a B.
For design?
Yes, for design.
Okay.
It's my middle-of-the-road belt.
I gave it a 9, and then I went, oh shit, wait, I'm thinking of the NXT UK title. And then I gave it a 6.5. Middle of the road is completely... I don't like the giant X on it still. I like the overall design. I don't like that the biggest thing I pick up off it is an X.
I mean, it's better than what they used to be.
Yes, it is.
And it's...
Their old one looked like a street sign.
Yeah, it did.
Like it's just weird. It looked like a
awful.
street sign.
It was awful. I think... I don't know. It's not bad. It's not great.
Right. That's a 6.5 probably sounds lower than I mean it to. It looks it's better than it should with a giant X on it. And it's definitely better than the previous version of it.
Right.
Okay.
I do enjoy that they have, again, the consistency between the men's and the women's division in NXT, and that the only differentiating factor is that the NXT is silver for the women and gold for the men. Just kind of a cool thing.
I'm fine with that. All right, Lineage?
I gave it a C.
Okay, I went a little higher. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
So, again, still, it's not as new as some of their other belts.
Right.
It's still relatively new.
Less than a decade.
Some of the people who have held it, it's like, oh, okay, there's some names on here.
So,
but how many of them have been 2-time champs?
what if we I'd almost say that this is the new IC belt. This is the new work rate belt. This is the guy that's about to go somewhere in the company.
Absolutely.
Which is weird that it's a world title and because, this brand's equal. It's not. NXT is still not equal. It's great. We love it. They put on amazing stuff down there and tell amazing stories. It's just not on the same level as Raw and SmackDown.
Right.
It's not the third brand. It's still the developmental.
My piece to it is, like I said before, there's been 2 guys who have held this belt twice.
So what I said about this is, let's see here. It had a little bit of a shaky start. Seth is a fine first champion, but Bo Dallas was an odd choice as number 2.
Number 3.
No, number 3.
Big E was after Seth.
Oh, right. Then it picked up real big after KO won it.
Yeah.
A little bit of a lag period after Shinsuke won it. Ciampa made it feel like a really important thing, but the exposure really wasn't there.
Yeah, and I would also say that it's cool to see Andrade have it, but he hadn't hit the point where he is now.
Right.
Where it was like, oh shit, I need to see this guy's matches.
And that may have been like the highlight of Bobby Roode's thing, but it still didn't feel big. And this may very well be a more important title historically to, the core fans than even the WWE main title.
Right.
But the exposure of the title isn't quite there.
Yeah.
All right. Current value.
I gave it a B.
I gave it a 6.5, and my only note was Adam Cole, baby.
Yeah. I mean, Cole and Gargano made me want to watch what was going to happen with this belt.
If Undisputed Era could get a little bit more exposure, all the belts would be fine.
Give me all the belts on.
If they could figure out how to merchandise Undisputed Era to the level of 2017 Bullet Club,
or even 2000-something Evolution.
Nah, I don't think you're right.
Evolution was
if they could figure
big
out,
deal at that point.
But it wasn't as mainstream as Bullet Club got.
True.
I'm saying if they could get Undisputed... I think that's their best shot right now is Undisputed Era.
Get the Undisputed Era shirts on people who don't watch wrestling?
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Not that I think it'll happen, but... All right. And now this is going to be probably our saddest category of the day, the NXT North American title.
So, overall, I actually had this belt tied with 2 other ones.
Uh-huh.
We'll get there. But it's the lower of the 3.
So, of all of the belts we're going to look at today, for a pure grade number, so if anyone decides to sit down and actually do all of the math for these number grades I've been giving them, this will by far be the lowest grade, but I don't actually consider it in my bottom 3, and we'll get to that reason in just a minute.
Design. I originally hated that belt. I thought it was ugly as shit.
Yep.
I give it a C because it's growing on me.
I give it a 5. Yeah. It's definitely more of a throwback design belt, again, to more of your 70s, 80s kind of style of design, and especially more of like a boxing title almost.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy the red maroon strap.
It's nice and it's different. It doesn't wow me. Nothing particularly jumps out. It's fine.
It shouldn't be more important or look better than the NXT title.
That's very fair.
And it doesn't.
You nailed that one. That's dead on. Lineage.
D. Because of one thing, and I know you're going to agree with me.
Yep.
There's been what? 4 people?
4 people. That's why I gave it a 0. It has no lineage. It's not even a year, or it's just over a year old.
The reason I'm not at an F is, again, Adam Cole, Ricochet, Johnny Gargano, and Dream.
The people that have held it are all amazing, and that definitely helps. The problem is it's literally just over a year old now.
Yeah, it debuted April 7th, 2018.
Right.
So it just had its 1 year.
It's 1 year and 4 months.
Yeah.
Literally 4 months no. It's
can't-
1 year, 4 months, and 1 day as of this recording.
You can't build a lineage in 1 year.
I was wrong. Less than 4 months. But anyways.
You can't build a lineage in 1 year.
No, you can't. It's well on its way.
Yeah.
Of a modern day belt. This is how you do it.
If you're going to make a belt seem important, but again, not as important, this is the way to do it.
You're well on your way. Yep. Well on your way. Problem is, it's not even a year and a half old, so can't.
All right.
Give it
Current value.
Give it a 4.
I give it a C. So pretty close.
As I said, again, it's new, and everyone that held it prior to Dream were basically just kind of holding it as a temporary holdover until the main title picture cleared up and they could kind of get involved with that. Especially Johnny.
Yeah. But now
And
also,
Adam.
Now also seeing Dream, Pete Dunne, and
Dream has the best chance, honestly, of elevating it into a title on its own. So, yeah, this title could come into its own under Dream as a legitimate secondary belt. I think he has the best shot so far of letting it stand on its own and not be the consolation prize belt.
I'll fight you on that one.
All right.
If Pete Dunne wins it, it is a very important belt.
Okay.
The fact that you have the second ever UK champion fighting for this belt and the longest reigning UK champion and one of the longest reigning champions in total in WWE fighting for this belt makes it feel a little more important to me.
Okay, how does that not go with what I just said? That's helping...
Because I'm picking Pete Dunne to propel it into the next
Oh, well,
level
that's
than
sure,
Dream.
that's totally fine. I'm just saying Dream has it on the right track. Not that someone else can't continue with that. It doesn't need to be Dream.
No.
That's
Pete
totally
Dunne.
fine.
Pete Dunne.
That's fine. But
to be honest, this is one of my, for the next takeover that's happening next weekend, this match with Dream versus Dunne versus Roderick Strong, by far the match I'm looking forward to the most.
So I think that exactly is going to start setting the right tone for this title, and that's really what it needs. Previously, it's almost kind of tried to compete with the NXT title as being as important when it shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And honestly, its very first appearance may have eclipsed the title because that's when the NXT title was kind of at a low point last year.
Yeah,
It was before Ciampa had it.
Yeah, and that ladder match, man.
Right.
With, who was it? EC3, Adam Cole.
Friggin' everyone.
Dream, Ricochet, and somebody else.
Lars Sullivan?
Yes.
Boo.
Yeah, boo that man. But, I mean, that's, that match was fantastic. And it again, felt more important. I wanted to see that match over whatever was happening. And that's not a knock on Aleister Black or anybody who had the belt around that point. But I was like, damn.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, that's that's not the job of the secondary title.
Right.
It's really kind of cool when it does almost feel more important. Pardon. But that's not good. That's not its job.
Right. I think they've done a pretty good job of stepping it back one notch.
Exactly.
But it's at a good spot right now.
I would agree. It's just a shame NXT doesn't have a little bit more exposure. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. On that note,
we're going to break it here. Part 2
next week.
Coming up.
Yep, we'll bring it back next week. So until then, we're history.